Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Mommin'. I'm Megan.
And I'm Jessica.
So what's going on with you guys? You said you have a story.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe you didn't read this message.
I'm glad I
So
didn't.
so Truman was napping and Nora was doing her quiet time. And she loves doing artwork while she does quiet time. So we have, crayons and markers and such in there. And all of a sudden, so I'm in the basement wrapping all the Christmas presents, and I hear Sean talking to her, and sometimes she comes down. And all of a sudden, they're both coming down, and she is naked except for her socks, and she has brown all over her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she shit herself and she rubbed it all over. She's just laughing hysterically. She had taken brown marker. She drew on every inch, and I mean every nook
No,
and
she
cranny.
didn't.
All over her
How?
body.
Not her back, though.
I didn't look, and Sean's doing the
No.
bath right now.
Oh, good. Oh, you didn't bathe her right away.
Nope. No. But she thought it was so, she wouldn't even talk to me. She was dancing in circles, giddy, like laughing hysterically. It was like she was possessed. It was the strangest thing. And Sean didn't even speak. He was
How did
like,
you find her?
she came downstairs to show
I thought you
him.
said, I thought you said they came downstairs together to get you.
Yes, and then he said he's like, I didn't even speak to her the whole way. I just said, let's go see mom, because I didn't know what to do.
I was like, what did he think you were going to do?
I mean, he had the same thought that I did, that it was poop. So
Oh.
it was actually a lot better than we both
Yeah, it's
thought
just
it
a
was, but
marker.
oh my gosh, but she's never done that before. So I
Oh,
might
she
have
hasn't.
no, I might have to rethink that strategy of, yeah.
Maybe
And
not, because Asher's drawn on his arms before and on the carpet, but like doesn't really anymore. Although I don't know. She's
I
older than
mean,
him.
she drew on her lady parts. So
Did you tell her we don't do that?
yeah, I said we draw on paper, not the other. Yeah.
It kind of sounds beautiful. Like she sounds like a beautiful free spirit, like dancing around, like not caring. I don't know. I'm like, I kind of can get like, I mean, I don't want her coloring everywhere, but I'm kind of like, all right, good. I don't know what that means about her, but
I don't know. I
her
mean, it's so
expressing
funny.
herself.
Megan's recently gotten really into, I don't know how to even say it, the enneagrams.
I don't know if it's Enneagram or Enneagram.
I don't know what it is, but now that
Yeah,
you're obsessed with it, I'm more curious to know, like, how can we test our kids? Because I'm so curious to know what they are.
I know. And I keep wondering that, but I just don't think you can know. And it's like a lot about like self-awareness. Like you have to be really honest on the test, which isn't like that fun. And because it's like about your faults.
Right. Yeah, it is interesting though. But years from now, we'll have them
Yeah,
do it.
I
Yeah.
know. I keep wondering. And did Sean take it yet?
No, no, he hasn't taken it.
And we're going to have to talk about this more in a different intro.
Yeah.
And if you already know your number or you think it's really awesome, please send us a message because I would like to talk to you about it.
Because Megan's obsessed, and I get texts and tags, like tag announcements on posts all the time. Like, check out your number.
We're trying to figure out a gift for some family members, and I was like, "What's their number again, Patrick? I'll check this and see if there's some ideas."
That was spot on.
It was spot on. Was it
Yeah.
spot on for you? Like those are your gifts, huh?
Oh, 100%. There was only one thing on there that I remember thinking that's not totally me, but everything else was.
Like you would rather that I would give you an alarm system. I can't remember what else there was on there, but like an alarm system over like another $300 gift. Like I don't know. I don't know, a day at a spa or a night at a hotel or like a plane ticket. Like you want that sounds good to you?
I mean, obviously, I would enjoy the others, but
Yeah,
we're
I don't
talking
mean it in
about,
judgmental.
yeah, no, but as an everyday thing, I would get greater joy out of the alarm.
Like, which would you pick if someone was like, you can have an alarm system or which thing are we gonna pick here? Or like a night at the hotel?
Alarm system.
Oh, okay. All right.
I would love to have both,
Yeah.
but there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear in my life. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
But And yes, your slippers and your robe. I know what to get you. Should we be doing gifts?
Well, it is hard because I'm like, I already have slippers and a robe. So
Right, of course
what
you
else do I need?
need a backup pair for when they get messy.
Oh no, mom and dad gave me this pair 2 years ago, and they are like the boot kind, and they're very warm. That's true. I can't wear them in the summer. I need summer slippers now.
Oh, okay. Well, we could
Not
preemptively
from
do that.
you. I didn't mean it like that.
Oh,
Oh my! Well, that is a funny story about Nora. I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, she's a class act, that one. Oh, well, we are so excited to introduce our guest that I'm sure all of you know and follow. We were so lucky to interview Susie Allison, the woman behind Busy Toddler, the Instagram account and website, and now author. She is the woman who helps you do really amazing crafts with your children that are both easy and educational. Susie talked to us a little bit about her life as a former educator turned stay-at-home mom, and then the creation of Busy Toddler, as well as her motherhood journey, which was not always a simple road. We really enjoy the conversation. She's hilarious. I'm sure you all know that from following her, but oh my gosh, she's so funny. And she can bill us for the therapy session that we had along with this interview. So we hope you enjoy listening as much as we enjoyed chatting with her.
Yes. And if you enjoy this episode, we would love it if you would share it with a friend and leave a rating and review. You can find us at momandpodcast.com, at Mom and Podcast on Instagram, and our Mom and Podcast Facebook group. Happy listening.
Hi, Susie. Thanks so much for joining us. We're so excited to have you today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, ladies.
Yes, we're so excited to talk with you. So we always just get started with having our guests tell us a little bit about themselves.
All right. Well, I'm Susie, and I run Busy Toddler, which is an Instagram account and a website. And I mean, just like a basic old social media domination. No, I'm just kidding. I'm all over the place now.
You are. That seems very accurate.
I know. I was like, it's true.
I didn't intend it to be that way, but here we are. So I live outside of the Seattle area. I have a wonderful husband named Chuck and 3 kids who are getting really old, which just way too old. Not really busy toddlers anymore, but we're going with it. They're 7.5, 5, almost 6, which is really throwing me for a loop. And then a just turned 4-year-old. And I used to be a teacher. And then on a whim, I started an Instagram account. And 5 years later, here we are.
Oh, that's
wow.
amazing.
Yeah, that is amazing. It's so funny. I just read a post yesterday about this woman who went shopping for her 5-year-old, and she was like, he was outgrowing all his 5T stuff, and it hit me, there's no 6T. He shops at the big boys now, and how she was crying in the store, and I was like, oh my gosh, like my daughter's almost a 5T. I totally get what you're saying. That has to be so strange.
It is, and something about it being in clothing too is like a really like devastating moment when you realize you're not in the cutesy infant toddler, and with my son, he's a lot, he's just a taller kid, and so for him it was like when he was 4 or 5, he was kicked out of that cutesy little section. And now with my daughter, I'm really feeling it. And now the third born is in a 4T, and I'm like, no, we are still in this section of Target. I'm not ready to cross the aisle yet. I'm not ready.
Yeah, it has to be a big thing. I don't even want to think about it.
No, and actually it's making me so sad, and I never even thought about it until right now.
No.
Oh, right. Next question.
Well, if you're comfortable sharing, we love hearing the backgrounds of how people decided to grow their family and if they talked about it beforehand or how it evolved.
Yeah, ours is a little bit of an interesting story. So Chuck and I met the first night of college, which is kind of funny. Our parents left and then we met each other, and we dated all through college, and we married a month after we graduated. We were so young, so young. And, 5 or so years after college, we decided we were ready to start a family. And apparently that wasn't going to happen for us. And we walked a really long road of infertility by ourselves. And I will say that when we walked this road starting about 10 years ago, it was a very different social media time back then, and a very different time even just 10 years ago in the world where you really did not talk about infertility. And I'm so happy that this is a subject that we talk about, because back then as I'm sitting there, not knowing if I'm ever going to have children, I could count on my hands 3 people I knew in my life who I did know had gone through some sort of infertility. And I reached out to them, and bless their hearts, they were there with me the whole time. And it ended up taking us, almost 4 years. It was 5 rounds of IVF. I don't even know how many IUIs, it was just an unbelievable process. And it kind of came down to the end where we were walking into what would become our last IVF round, where they were going to put in the last embryos. And we knew walking into that appointment that either they were going to have mature embryos that we could potentially have a baby with, or they were going to say, we still don't have mature embryos. And then we would close that chapter on biological children. So it was a really interesting time for us to just walk and fight to have children. And, Chuck would always say, this doesn't end until you become a mom. And however that looks is how it looks. But the fight doesn't end until you become a mom. And I always look back now and I think how the timing of everything. And if we'd had Sam when we wanted to, or when our timeline started that we wanted to have kids, I always say if we had kids then, Instagram didn't exist. And I never would have had this chance to have this job. So we walked into that appointment, and the embryologist, which is such a great word, if anybody out there is in fertility, you know what an embryologist is, practically came skipping into the room and said, we have embryos. And they were just over the moon for us. We were thrilled, and we ended up with Sam 9 months later. We ended up with Sam, and we were so thrilled. And, we started to, after a year, kind of, should we think about what are we going to do next? Like, how are we going to grow our family? And Kate decided to grow it on her own. And she was a complete medical miracle because, there were multiple medical reasons why Chuck and I shouldn't have kids, and surgeries and different things had happened. And we were just told this was never going to happen naturally for you. And then there was Kate. And I always say, if you actually know Kate as a person, like, it's not surprising that she was just going to will herself into existence. Like, this doesn't surprise me about Kate. And so I found out about a week after Sam's first birthday that we were going to have 2 under 2. And then, right after Kate's first birthday, we were like, well, we love this age spread. Should we roll the dice? And I was pregnant immediately, and we got Matt. And it's just like an unbelievable turn of events that we went from begging and wanting this dream of parenthood so much and thinking we might never get this opportunity to suddenly we had 3 kids, 3 and under, which was definitely just we hit fast forward really fast.
Right.
Just sprinted into parenthood.
So you got pregnant naturally pretty quickly.
Yeah.
I mean, did you have any explanation for?
No, they just think that some treatments that had happened. And then they also, what we always say is they think that Sam's pregnancy may have kind of hit a reset button on my body. And I always say that Sam was like the baby equivalent of blowing in a Nintendo cartridge from the 80s, early 90s. He just reset my whole system. And that was kind of the only thing the doctors could think of, is that, some surgeries that had happened had finally worked. And then just this reset on my hormones had also finally worked. And there we were with 3 kids after not expecting to really even get to be in this party. And then to be really full on dancing. Here we are.
And one time it happening, you'd be like, okay, well, maybe miracles happen, but 2 times
I know.
Quickly, that's
yeah, we definitely, and I feel like we definitely have 3 miracle kids, because we have Sam that we almost didn't have, and then you have kind of Kate, this surprise, and then Matt, we always joke, is our only planned pregnancy.
That's amazing. They all have
very different stories and, very different starts, which is, fun for the kids. It'll be fun when they're older to explain all of this to them.
Were you expecting for your last one, for Max is your
Matt?
Matt. So were you expecting or prepared to potentially do IVF again, or?
Yeah, we were pretty prepared. We were like, okay, this is, what are we going to do? How will this look? And then before we even had to really answer those questions, we knew we were having a third, and yeah, it was crazy. It was a really interesting time for us. Yeah.
How did you decide 3? I always am curious, because I never know for myself.
For us, I had to have 3 C-sections. The kids were all really large. Sam was 11 pounds.
What?
And I did not have diabetes. So it was just like a very, he was just an 11-pound baby. And then Kate was our petite princess. She was 9 pounds, 10 ounces. And then Matt was another 10-1. And so the pregnancies and then the C-sections, they were just hard on my body. And so, I think Chuck and I might have wanted to have a couple more kids if everything had gone to plan and everything had happened the way that maybe we drew it up in the playbook, but it didn't. And so, I said when we had Kate and we would look around the dinner table, I just always felt like someone was missing. Like we weren't all there yet. And then it was almost immediately after we had Matt that it was like this overwhelming peace came over me. And I was like, we're all here. Like it is done. Like we're all here. Everybody's at the table. And now we start moving forward. And that's a really interesting feeling to have as a parent when you feel like you can really close the book and say, we're not going to hit reset again and we're not going to start over again. Now we just start moving forward. And it is a very different feeling to know that these are your lasts and these are the first lasts and also to know that now you're just walking into the future as opposed to, starting back over with diapers or you're putting the baby gate back up or you're always going in reverse a little bit. But to actually be taking those steps forward, it's a really cool feeling. It's a really cool feeling when you get there. And everybody always talks about how sad it is. And it is sad, but it's also really exciting to know that everybody's here and now we just start living life and we are together.
Yeah. Oh, and so true. I think about, we have 2 and I'm like, if we added a third, man, what you can do in a weekend or whatever is like so different with a baby.
So different.
Yeah. I love how you said that though, because I often feel sad that I'm like, oh, well, I think these are my last, I have 2 and like, I think it's my last one. So I think I'm just going to treasure this and, but yeah, it is exciting. That's good to shift your mind on that too. I like that approach.
Yeah. A good little perspective shift is always a good thing to have,
Absolutely. Those are big babies though, for a tiny person.
They were big babies. Yeah. No, I am not tall. I'm 5'4", which always surprises people. People think I'm a lot taller than I am. Chuck is very tall. He's 6'4", and he was a 10.5-pound baby back in the 80s, bless his mother's heart. And then my sister and I were both big babies. So just genetically, like this was going to happen. Like we were they were some big babies.
That's so funny seeing you like you're so trim and petite.
Yeah, that must have been, that probably was a hard pregnancy.
Yeah. Sam being 11 pounds, like I still look back at pictures or sometimes when my friends will have babies and then around when the baby gets to be 3 months old and they're about 11 pounds, I always hold the baby next to my stomach and I'm like, yes, this feels correct. This feels like I'm going to go into labor soon.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh.
He was born, all of my kids were born into size 1 diapers. Nobody had newborn diaper. I've never seen a newborn diaper.
I mean, what size clothes were they in? Were they even in
3 months? They were all in 3 months. When we had Sam, they had some at the hospital, but when we had Kate, the nurse was she's like, there are no newborn diapers. She's looked everywhere. And all of a sudden she comes back like an hour later and she's kind of huffing and puffing. And as only a nurse would do, because they're just the most wonderful people ever, she goes, I ran across the street to Whole Foods and I bought you size 1 diapers so that poor Kate could wear them. It was just the nicest thing ever. So Kate had these like really nice Whole Foods diapers that she was wearing.
She had a really nice and pampered,
a really nice diaper.
That's an above and beyond nurse.
I know, it was so above and beyond. She was so nice to do that, but Kate really needed it. She was blowing everything out.
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, wow. So you mentioned this a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit about your professional background and how you went from teaching to starting your Instagram account and this whole empire?
I know. It's so crazy. So I was a kindergarten teacher and a first grade teacher, and I worked for a large district outside of Seattle, and I loved it. And one of the things I loved in my job was this kind of side role that I had within the school district, which was I was the reading curriculum specialist and a math curriculum specialist, which meant that I spent a lot of time in professional development, training hundreds, sometimes about 1,000 teachers how to teach specific curricula and specific programs. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with this idea of how do you teach an adult to teach? And as much as I loved teaching children, which I will always be my forever passion, I also found this kind of side passion of teaching adults. And that was something I just absolutely adored doing. And when I had Sam, I had him in spring at the end of 2013. And so I finished the year on maternity leave and took the summer and knew that I was going to stay home with him, that this was on my heart. And I was ready. I felt professionally ready, that I had done what I wanted to and I'd accomplished what I wanted to in teaching. And I was ready to hit pause, at least for a certain amount of time. And the first year home with Sam was fantastic. I always missed my friends at lunch and I missed those little moments of being in the classroom. My mom and I always talk about how fun Valentine's Day is in a classroom, and you can't replicate that at home. It's so much fun in a classroom. And by the time I had Kate, that was really when kind of the busy toddler stuff started to creep into my life. And I started to find myself, as most parents do, especially when you have your second child, you're drowning in a way that you knew you were going to be, but you also had no idea it was going to be like this. And and it's really just unbelievable. And I had, now I talk to parents all the time about you need to go into survival mode, but that wasn't a term I had for myself back then. And I didn't realize how to give myself grace. And I didn't realize what steps I needed to do to kind of balance and juggle my life and the kids' lives and this kind of feeling of some sort of peace. And so as Sam was watching more and more TV during the morning, because, Daniel Tiger's mom was doing such a lovely job raising him. And I would put the baby down for these morning naps and I would come downstairs and he was, 20, 22 months old at the time. And I would think there has to be a little bit more. I've got to start. I need to just do more, and not in the I need to add more to my plate, but just in the I want my friend back. I had such a great 20 months with this little buddy, and I really missed him. I missed my little guy. And I started kind of challenging myself. What if we do a really small activity each morning while Kate naps? Not a big thing, a little thing. And so I started looking on the internet, and all I could find was big things. All these projects I would find on Pinterest were like, oh, this is going to be great for your toddler. So you're going to need to go to Hobby Lobby and Michael's. You'll need $150 in supplies. It's going to take 8 hours to prep it, but he will play for 5 minutes and it's going to be great. And I would read these recipes and I go, I can't do this. Like, we can't afford this. I don't have the time to do this. Like, what is this? And so I kind of just started digging deep into what I knew from teaching and what I just knew inherently from just the pedagogy of children. And I started setting up little activities with the stuff we had around the house. I didn't have money to go out and buy fancy supplies. We were living off one income. I needed to stay within a very tight budget and just use what we had in the house. And I started setting up these small activities for him pretty much every day while Kate napped, is something for him and me to do, and a way to turn Daniel Tiger off. And that was kind of the whole end of winter, early spring of 2015. And by June, I was on Instagram more and more with my friends. It was that was like the platform to be on at the time. And I mean, it still is, but it really was taking off then. Mm-hmm. And I started looking around and there really wasn't anyone putting out really easy kids activities on Instagram. And I thought, I wonder if there are other parents on Instagram who are also like searching for these, but what they'd find is like a really elaborate picture, one sentence, and then you need to go to the website or something. I'd be like, that's too many steps for me. So I thought, well, I'll post a picture and I'm going to give everything I can into the caption. I'm going to write it all out. They don't have to travel anywhere. They're just going to read it there because I don't even have a website. I mean, I don't have anywhere for you to go to. And I started looking for names and I stumbled on the name Busy Toddler. And I thought, this is great. Like, why has no one taken this name yet? And I signed up on June 5th and I kind of put it out on the internet. And I just was like, here we go. This is it. And I did it pretty in secret. I didn't tell my husband for a couple of days. I didn't tell my best friend for like a week. And by the end of the first month, I already had 2,000 followers. And I was like, I know. And so it's like, it was pretty loud and clear that, yes, there are other parents looking for really easy activities on Instagram. And so that's literally how it started. And that was June. And by September, I opened the website and here we are today.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
So perceptive of you to recognize that hole in the market, or like the Instagram market, and then do something about it.
Yeah. I really did. Like, it's one of like, I wouldn't say I'm not a purposeful person in my life, but it was a very like I can look back now and be like, wow, 2015 Susie, like, yes, nice. But And I'm not really a very like calculating person in that sense, but I really did look and go, there is no one else doing this, and this needs to be there. Like there has got to be somebody, like other people there's got to be someone else that wants this just like I want this. So I'll help them find it because I have this teaching background and, I have a journalism background, so I can write decently and I'm going to put this out here and, and it literally it was by the end of the first month, I was like, okay, so this is happening. And I think, and it was one of those where people asked me, they're like, well, was it just like, oh, you got big really fast? And I'm like, I did, but I also didn't. It was like 5 years is a really long amount of time to gain the following that I've gained. And so I feel like it's never been like this wham, this weight on my shoulders. Like you wake up today and you suddenly have 1 million followers. It's like, no, it's just been a really like calm, like I've been able to get used to different chunks of time. And then we just kind of build up and we move on. And, and I would never say I'm used to having 1 million followers, but at least I wasn't dumped into it. I had a nice steady walk. Run.
I mean, that must feel, I can't imagine what that feels like when you go on there and you're like, wow, I'm posting to 1 million people right now.
I mean, I will say like it's something I never try to think about. But I will say it was like a couple months ago. And my husband and I are both working, and he's obviously been working from home since March. And he's at his little desk in our bedroom, and I was sitting in this blue chair that I always write from on Instagram. And, you just notice things about your spouse or your partner that you just a subtle change in their behavior. And I looked up at him and I saw him kind of like rock back in his chair a little and kind of let out a sigh. And I said, what are you doing over there? And he said, oh, I'm just triple checking this email before I hit send. It's going out to 700 people at my work. And I looked at him and I went, gee, tell me more about posting to that many people. Just because I had to. And he just burst out laughing. He's like, yeah, have you ever had that kind of pressure on you where you're like putting something out there for a bunch of people to read and look at? And I was like, gosh, I don't even know what kind of pressure you're under right now.
700.
Which is a lot. I've never emailed
that. Is a lot of people to email.
Right. To be fair, it is.
To be fair, it is, especially when you're as introverted as type B as he is. Like that's a lot of people, but I had a good time with it.
Oh, that's so
for sure.
I had to. I literally couldn't help myself but say something.
You learn a lot when everyone's working at home about your partner.
You really do. You really do. I learned that Chuck eats lunch very early, and I don't like that. I'm not an early lunch eater. Like he's like 10:50. He's like starting to like think about it, and then he's down getting lunch at like 11:02. And I'm like, really? I like had breakfast in 10 minutes. I'll have breakfast.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. What?
11 is much too early for
way too early. Way too early.
I'm an 11 o'clock lunch person.
Oh no! You can call Chuck and like do a podcast with him around lunch. You can do a lunchtime podcast.
I think it would be enjoyable. From the sounds of Chuck, he sounds incredible.
I mean, I think it would be really fun. I'd be interested in hearing it. I'll be the one listener on that day.
No, I bet people would listen to Chuck.
Oh, I think they would. I think you'd get a lot higher viewership than having me on. Do you guys want me to go get him? Like, I'm fine. Like, I can bow out. It's been fun, ladies. I'll go get Chuck.
No, we didn't mean that.
Yeah. Oh, that's so funny. Wow, that's such an evolution, and I love that. I mean, I can say personally, like, crafts overwhelmed me for quite some time, and now it's selfish of me to want to do crafts because I really have a hard time with playing pretend over and over with my daughter. So I am always about like, let's do a craft. And I have basically everything saved in yours. I'm like, this is what we're going to do. Like, let's just go to my Instagram. Like,
no, I'm the same way. People talk a lot, especially in our parenting generation, this kind of guilt around, am I playing with my child enough? Am I sitting with them enough? Am I engaging in their pretend play enough? And I always say, play is great for a child. We're not hardwired to play. Like our brains we are not in that play mode, and we cannot play the way that they can play. And so if you can let your child independently play, the more that they can play alone without you kind of being involved, the better. So I always say to parents, while we get really wrapped up in this idea that we need to be playing with our children all day long because this is the only way to connect with them and the only way to show them love, it's like, no, there are a lot of other ways to connect with your child that still honors the independent play the serious and significant learning they're doing in that. And for me, activities is one of those ways. And, doing like a little coloring page or puzzles or games, things like that. It's like, I will always do those with my kids ahead of sitting and playing Pretty Pretty Ponies, because I just I'm not good at it. And I don't want to take away the learning the children are doing. I want them to be doing their deep, serious learning that I'm just going to mess up if I sit down and play with them. So for me, it's been about kind of trying to separate myself from play and let play be something the kids know they do on their own. And then, but mom's there for activities, and mom's there for crafts, and mom's there for puzzles and games. And, she'll cook brownies with you, things like that. That's me.
Oh, I need to hear that so much. I pretend play. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I can't do it for another minute. And I've only done it for like 2. And I'm like, I think we're done.
Oh my God. I know my daughter can sit and pretend play in her room for like an hour. And I'm like, so it's been 35 seconds. I know, because I've been counting in my head. And like, you want to go play Candyland instead? Like, I'll do that with you. But I do feel like with our generation, something changed when we became parents, and this obsession with that you have to sit and play with your child all day long, or you're not fulfilling your parenting duty with them, or you're not engaging with them enough or connecting, you're not available to them. And it's not true. It just is not true. And if we look back to our parents when they parented us, and we remember our moms didn't sit on the floor with us all day long. They didn't. I mean, I remember my mom playing occasionally. She played games. We played Go Fish. We always had a deck of cards in our hand. But when I was in my room playing, I mean, my mom was somewhere on the phone with like the cord wrapped all around her, like spinning in the kitchen.
Oh, those, yes.
I know, but our parents knew that like play is your job. Like, this is your job. Go play. Just play all day. And then they would connect with us and be with us at dinner times and meals, at card games, at puzzles, at all these other places. And but they let us have our play world. And I love that. I want to get back to that, to this idea of where we honor the fact that children are really good at playing. We say, you're really good at this, so you do this because you excel at it. And then, you and I will hang out in a little bit, and we'll have lunch, and maybe we'll play a round of memory, and then you can go to your nap.
I literally was just talking to my husband about not my parents' generation, but like my grandparents, because I was like, man, like they had the house clean and they cooked like great meals and they had all these kids. And I was like, you know what though? I bet they weren't trying to entertain their kids all day. I just bet they weren't.
No, and because so often we end up sacrificing either part of ourself or part of our work, and whatever your work may be, it's, the work you're doing leaving the house, or the work you're doing on a computer, or the housework. Because we think, well, I have to sit and play with the kids right now, and I have to be fully engaged with them for the entire morning, sitting playing with them. So that means that the dishes are going to pile up. And then by the time you get a chance to go to the dishes, they're so insurmountable. You just feel defeated. And here we are in this like parenting guilt and defeat, and the world weighs down upon you. Whereas we can say, your job is to play right now. And I love that for you. My job right now is to do the dishes. This is where I'll be. And I also think that teaches our kids a lot about the fact that there isn't a cleaning fairy that's just going to like magically clean up the house while you're napping, which I don't want. I want them to know how hard I work around here, and I want them to be a part of it. And I want them to have little jobs and to really be a part of this little like house community we have. And so I think if we can just set ourselves and remember that what we're doing and the work we're doing with our own lives and our own jobs and the jobs we have in our home, that's as important as your child's play. And so if we can separate those things and say, you need a chance to do your play and I need a chance to work, and then we will meet back together for all the rest of the time.
Yes.
We're always with them now.
Right.
Oh, I love what you're saying. It's so true.
I feel such guilt when I'm doing the dishwasher and I am counting the minutes. I feel like I'm counting the minutes that I'm doing that. Like, I'm not playing with them, and they're going to know, they're going to think I'm a bad mom. And I think that's intensified because of COVID,
right?
And they're not seeing other kids. So that weighs on me. And I'm like, well, gosh, I should let them independent play, but because they're not seeing other kids, should I be doing more? So I think that's been a conflict.
And I think if you can rethink, again, like shifting that perspective, if you can shift your perspective and say, right now, I'm going to do the dishes and I'm going to model for my child how to do dishes, how to be a community member, how to do something you don't like doing. because you have to for the sake of this community that we live in. And if we can kind of maybe invite the child into doing the dishes, from a very early age, my kids were able to start sorting the silverware. That was legit a Busy Toddler activity, like one of the very first ones I posted. Like you can find it in June 2015 is Sam sorting the dishes. And it was an easy one, but he could be with me there, and I'm working and we're communicating. So we're connecting that way. I'm available. I think when we become unavailable is when we're sitting on the couch scrolling Facebook and Instagram and we're telling them to go play. Well, you're in a leisure activity while you're telling them to go do hard work. That's a bit of a disconnect. And that is where I will say, instead of sitting on my couch scrolling the Instagram, I'll say, let's go play a puzzle. Let's do let's do books right now together or something like that. But if I'm working to vacuum, then you're working on, this play pretend world you've set up in your room, and you're working on the train setup that you have here. And we're both doing jobs right now, and everybody's doing exactly what they need to be doing to help our family and to help your own life work.
Oh, you can bill us for this therapy session.
No problem. I'll send that over. It'll be over really soon.
I almost started tearing up when you said that, because that a level of guilt that I have been carrying.
No.
That's such a wonderful thing to hear, and someone from an educator who actually knows what they're talking about. For instance, like me calling Megan and saying, I can't take care of these kids anymore.
Well, I mean, I do the same thing, so, you haven't seen my text threads to my friends.
Everyone needs their outlet.
Everyone needs their person.
So when you started Busy Toddler, you were a stay-at-home mom.
Yes.
And now you've added different avenues on that.
Yeah.
You've done an audiobook. Are you able to talk about kind of the progression of how it started and what it is now?
Like I said earlier, because it's been a 5-year span, it's not like I was dropped into this. It's been a very gradual workup into where we're at. And so in the beginning, it's so funny. I was thinking back to the first summer when all I had was Instagram, and oh my gosh, it was so funny. That was back in the days when the feeds were chronological. Do you remember that? The chronological feed, don't get me started, all wax nostalgic for a long time. But back then you had to post twice a day. And it was so fun. And I would do a morning activity with Sam, and then we'd post it on Instagram, our one picture. And then we'd do an afternoon and we'd post it on Instagram, our one picture. And it was so fun. And then then I built a website, and then Pinterest and Facebook, and things just gradually started picking up and gradually became what it is now, which is just a complete washover of my entire life. And this is literally all I do. And I do nothing else. No, we have a good balance. We have a good balance here, but it does end up being anywhere, depending on the week, is anywhere between 40 to 60 hours, because it doesn't stop on the weekends. Weekends don't exist on the internet. Unfortunately, I have asked them to close the internet on weekends. They have not listened to my requests for some sort of a break. So it is a little murky in that sense, but I managed to do everything, and I have this whole time while the kids are napping or sleeping. And so Chuck and I always joke that the kids will sometimes be like, well, Dad just works all day. And I'm like, you have no idea what goes on when you're sleeping.
How dare you?
I have to, I get up about an hour before them, and I do some light, I'll do some emails and things like that. And then now, because it's a pandemic, I homeschool them all morning, and we do our morning life and things like that. And then at 1, everybody goes down for their nap or rest time, depending on what stage they're at in their life. And that's when I hop on Instagram for my afternoon. And that I always post every day in the afternoon on Instagram. And I sit and I work until about 3-ish is when the kids get out of their nap and their rest time and things like that. And then we do our afternoon play and things like that. And then once they go to bed at 7:30-ish, 8 o'clock-ish, then I work until about midnight minimum. And then we start it all over again, just a little Groundhog Day. And then on the weekends, I tend to work a little bit more because Chuck isn't working. And so oftentimes Saturdays and Sundays, one of my other blog friends and I, we call it office hours. And she's on the East Coast and I'm on the West Coast, but we set up our little quote unquote office hours at the same time so that we kind of have someone like a colleague that you're, doing your work with, just the same way that anybody going to an office or on their computer right now, Zooming their friend would have that person that's online at the same time as them. That's kind of how we have things set up. So Saturdays and Sundays, we can do office hours. And touch base with each other. I know. Yes. I'll just do a shameless plug where that's Days with Gray if you follow her. She's fabulous. Yeah, that's Days with Gray.
Oh,
yeah.
That's so fun.
We have our little office hours on the weekend. We do our stuff together.
I love that you do that, because that's what it lacks when you're working from home and during the pandemic is connection.
It is. And it's, it's so funny because you think of that these bloggers out there, you think of us as like sole entities kind of by ourselves. And we are in like kind of like a broad sense, but we all have little groups and little like niche, like little friend circles that we do run in. And some of these people I have been friends with and blogging with and like connected with on like a personal and a working level for, over 5 years now. Now I've never met them. I've never seen their face. The most we do is like, like a FaceTime or something like that every now and then. But yeah.
You need to do like a retreat.
I know we always like we try, there are actual blogging conferences and those are really fun. And we had a lot this year that were then canceled. And so for us in blogging, it's like, well, I'll see you again in 2 years.
Oh, it's true.
And you're already used to not seeing each other.
I know.
So
I know. So it's like our one time to see each other throughout the year. But yeah, it's an interesting like backside of blogging is that a lot of us do all know each other and we do all have these like really connected, we're interrelationships like between all of us. And it does make it less lonely because you really don't feel like you're working by yourself. You do have like a team of people that you can be like, hey, does this make sense? And they're like, no, it does not. And that image looks terrible. Okay.
You kind of need, because as an individual, it's really overwhelming to be like, is this good? Is this funny? Like, I think it is. Yeah. I love that you have that community that you can work with.
It is. It's very fun. It's a fun space. Yeah. I like it.
Super cool. I like how honest you are about how much work it takes, because you see you posting once a day and you're always happy and you're always, telling all these helpful tips and pieces of information. And it's so easy to think, wow, like, look what she gets to do and how fun that must be. But we're not seeing you up until midnight working.
No, and it's not a pretty picture. When I'm up until my hair is like all frazzled and got my little like cardigans wrapped around me and struggling.
I'm curious if did you have was it a little bit better balance not balance is a horrible word, but pre-pandemic, were you homeschooling then too? Or no childcare?
I would say things have gotten better now because Chuck is home. And so there are these moments where I'll say, hey, I have to, do this phone call. And instead of having to schedule it around like really odd hours now, he can take, a break or do something like that or sit with the kids. And so it's actually, for my job, it's been nicer. I think he misses his office. I'm having a great time. No, it's been nice just in little senses of just being able to I have a touch more flexibility with my time than I used to have, just because there's another set of eyeballs to make sure the kids aren't like couch diving or something while I'm on an interview.
So I have to know you were an educator, so you have that background, but you have, you have limitless ideas on your page. Where do they come from?
I always joke with people that that's my dark gift. This is my dark gift. And what I always say is I'm like a person who makes recipes, and God bless these food bloggers. They'll take 4 ingredients. They're like, I can do 17 different meals with these 4 ingredients. And I'm like, I don't know how it's a half teaspoon of baking soda, but I'm here for it. Yeah. And I'm fascinated by these people. But if you just apply that over, that's essentially what I do. And I somehow have that ability. It's just, a spark inside of me where I can look at a set of supplies in a house and go, oh, yeah, no, those two you should definitely hide Post-it notes somewhere and have your kid find them. That makes sense. And I don't know why that's inside of me, but it's no different than a food blogger. And I always say it's so funny because parents, we go and we grab a cookbook at night, we go online, we go to Pinterest, we find the recipe we want to use, and we never feel guilty about that. I never feel bad that it's not my own homemade chocolate chip cookie recipe. Like, yeah, I don't know how to put ingredients together like that, but she does, and they're fantastic. So I'm going to follow her recipe. But then on the flip side, there's oftentimes this guilt wrapped around kids' activities like, well, I'm not that kind of mom. I don't know how to put those together. And it's like, well, that's what I'm for. I'm like an Instagram cookbook of activities. Go find the recipe that works for you and put it on the table. And we never think twice about doing that with a food blogger. But for some reason, when it's activities or a crafts for the kids, it's like this, I always have to copy hers. I can't do this on my own. And I just wish that we could get past that and see it for what it is. It's like, you're right. something about me and this just all clicks to me, no different than that food blogger. It clicks for them. Everybody has their own path, and just find, instead of worrying about it, be like, hey, it's already there and it's for free. Pull off that recipe.
It's so true.
Do it.
I think that's right, though. There became this shift. I think it's like correlated with Pinterest.
Oh, 100%.
Yes, because it was this, if you're a Pinterest mom or not,
Mhm.
and it's this title that people hold proudly if they are, but if
Right.
you're not, I mean, and you don't have to be doing these elaborate crafts that you come up with, like you said, but there's something there that I've never thought about in that way, but I think you're totally right.
Yeah, if you just can think of it like a recipe. And my kids were saying the other day, they're like, you're so good at drawing, Mom. And I was like, no, I'm good at copying someone else's drawing. Like, don't ask me to like actually sit here and draw a dog, but like I can look at someone else who drew a dog and be like, all right, good enough. Here we go. Same kind of thing. It's like, just borrow my activities, take them, use them at home, be a hero with your children. Don't ever feel guilty about it. That's why they're there.
Yeah.
Do you have like one, I know you have a million, but do you have like a favorite of your crafts that you've done and activities?
I mean, I think like I'm always going to default to a sensory bin. And I think it's because they're so ageless. And I talk about this all the time, that from 12 months old to 12 years old, you will find a child in a sensory bin. And I just think that there's something so magical about that. And if people don't know what a sensory bin is just a large pan or bin, think like under the bed storage container, and then just filling it with rice or cornmeal or something very soothing that the child can just have a really tactile experience with. And while we look at that and say, number one, that's going to be messy. And number two, I don't want to vacuum that. And number three, no one's going to enjoy that. Kids look at it and they just inherently are like, yes, this makes sense to me. And that goes back to just that kids are hardwired for play, and we adults are just, boring adults. But kids really, they learn so many magical things from sensory bins, and they learn about math, and they learn about science and reasoning and cause and effect and life skills and all these immeasurable things that we want them to kind of learn on their own. We want them to discover capacity. And we don't necessarily want to sit there and be like, this is what volume is. But if they can have that back set up in preschool and toddlerhood where they're like, yeah, I've seen how when I fill this giant container and then I pour it in that little one, it doesn't work. Like, we've got a disconnect here. And they can learn all that on their own, and they can learn it with a sensory bin. And I think it's the coolest. I just think it's absolutely the coolest thing for a child to have access to. But I know it is scary looking. Very scary.
Okay, Jessie has embraced them, and I have to be honest. Every day I'm like, no, I haven't done it. So thank you. I guess I'll suck it up.
Here we go. I'm gonna bring you. Here we go, Megan. We're gonna do like a TED Talk here on sensory bins. I'm gonna give you like a hard sell, like a traveling salesman. So there was a study done. There's been many studies done about what characteristic creates a successful child, becomes a successful high schooler, a successful adult, blah, 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 things like that. And they started looking at kindergartners and is there a trait that we can really like pinpoint? Is there a trait we can really pinpoint? And they did. And it was self-control. The amount of self-control a child has in kindergarten can be a really big direct link into their success later on in life. How do you teach self-control to a child? How do you do that? I would argue you can do that with a sensory bin. And I would argue it pretty successfully. Now I'm going to try to argue it successfully to you. Okay. If you think about a sensory bin, you've got this giant bin full of mess that a child just wants to make a mess with. And who wouldn't? Like, who doesn't want to like pretend they're at a wedding in the 80s and just like throw rice across the room? Like, I'm not cleaning this up later. She is. Like, I'm just going to throw this and make it rain. But if we can teach them with this sensory bin that, yes, we have impulses. We need to control them. We have urges. We need to play within the rules. We need to set within a set of boundaries. And so I've always set up my kids with, there's 3 sensory bin rules. No dumping, no throwing, no eating. I mean, come on. And of course, those little ones, as those little 1-year-olds and tabies, they are going to taste it. They're going to be like, oh, this is fun. No, it's really not that delicious. They might turn it into a buffet. You can take it away when it's a buffet. Make sure it's taste safe, things like that. But we work on this. No dumping, no throwing, no eating. No dumping, no throwing, no eating. And you will watch gradually as the child is working with the sensory bin that, yes, maybe the first day, and they might be really young. They want to just throw it out of the bin. But then gradually, as the bin has been taken away and we've modeled this and the parent has said, I said no dumping, no throwing, no eating. You did that. We'll try again later for greater success. And the bin's gone. And yes, they might cry. and they might be really sad and they might be really angry. And that is just one of those moments in parenthood where you're like, yes, this is going to be hard for you. It's going to be hard for me. And I have to own this moment because of the greater good, because you have to learn rules and you have to learn boundaries and you have to learn self-control. And then gradually you will watch that child, and you might even see it someday where they kind of pick it up and they want to throw it. And then they realize, you know what, I can't. I have to keep it in the bin. And right there, you have taught that child self-control, and you've done it with like a $5 bin from Target and 3 pounds of rice. And you have worked that child kind of through this process of learning self-control. And you think about, as an adult, we have to exhibit self-control. I want to speed down the road. I want to go as fast as I want, but I have to stay within the rules. I want to be first in line at the grocery store, but I have to have self-control. I have to play within the rules. And I think we can really help our kids start to learn about rules and boundaries and this amazing skill of self-control if we start working with them on sensory bins. And then the plus side is, once we have worked with them on sensory bins and once they have done sensory bins and they get really successful at it, then you end up buying yourself, like, we're talking like 45 minutes, an hour of time sometimes, where they'll just sit with the bin. And that is worth a couple of vacuums in the very beginning. It's always worth it to me. So there's my TED Talk, my hard sell. You can report back later on how it goes.
That was brilliant.
Yeah, have you applied to do a TED Talk? I feel like you should do that TED Talk.
Let's talk like pie in the sky dreams, ladies. A TED Talk. That would be like my pie. It would be like my pie in the sky dream. Like, I would say, like, if I had like the vision board, which I don't have, but if I did, that would be up there. I think that would be so fun.
I think that you might be selling yourself short. I
feel like this is a 2021 goal. Like, I don't think it's that far down the line.
You report back when you get accepted.
I will report back when I get accepted for my TED Talk. You guys can come watch it.
Ooh, that'd be great.
Live.
Yes. Oh, great.
Yeah, it's funny. I've never thought about the self-control, but I have to say, my daughter makes minimal mess with her bins now. She's 4.5. And if she drops something, she is the first one down to say, "Oh, Mommy, I dropped something." And she'll pick it up.
Yeah,
now, my 1-year-old, he's still throwing everything. So I have to say, I've stopped giving it to him. So maybe I just need to start and showing him that it'll be taken away, because he got some leverage with that rice.
Yeah. The other thing with kids that are like in the 1-year-old stage that I've learned over the years is to make sure to do it immediately after a meal, because then they're pretty calm, their body's calm, and they're not hungry. Yes. I had one that was like, "Oh, is this a buffet? Did you made me 3 pounds of dry rice?" Yes. And they're just like fistfuls in their mouth. But if I would set it up after lunch or after dinner, then we were much more successful because we weren't like interested in eating it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Great advice. Yes, thank you for that.
There you go.
So I have to ask what craft materials you have on hand, because I saw I think it was the takeover that you just did on the Today's Parent. And I was expecting a huge closet full of things, and it was like one small container.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have space in the house, so I can't have like one of those. Oh, have you seen those like beautiful craft rooms that like open up? It's like the big shelf and like unfolds. There's like 4 tables and like 27 different I mean, how cool are those? I don't have space for one. I mean, I think that'd be awesome, but we don't have room for that in our house. So I've always been big with my parenting and my life is just live within your means and be happy with, live within your means. And so what I have is a laundry room. And I have a small spot in my laundry room where I can fit supplies. And so I found a little, I think it's Rubbermaid, or is it Sterilite? It's one of them. Mm-hmm. And it's just a little tiny drawer system. And I fill it with as much as I can. I have my sensory bin bases on the bottom. The bottom drawer is like so heavy, I can barely pull it out. But I will not get rid of any of my sensory bases because you can keep those for years. I mean, the rice that I've got in there now is for sure going to preschool next fall. It is so old. It's so old. And like my pom-poms, my oats and things like that. And then I've got a bin, like another drawer of just like the sensory bin scoops and stuff that I use, things I've collected over the years. I had one friend that saved formula scoops for me for like a year. She's my favorite person ever. And they're and they're so, like, I feel like I'm running out. I need to find someone with a baby because I'm going to need more. I'm not getting rid of I love the formula scoops. They're the best scoops. And then eventually I got sick of like losing all my cups and measuring cups. So I did buy the kids, like I broke down and invested like $1 at the dollar store on like measuring cups for my kids. And I have funnels. A lot of it, most of it's just from the dollar store, just like funnels, cups, scoops, kind of things like that we can throw into a sensory bin. And my kids are so funny because they've been doing this literally their whole lives. I mean, Sam, he was 2 when I started this, so he doesn't remember a time before this. And certainly the others have no clue that there was ever a life before Busy Toddler. And they will stand at that like area and they'll order, like they're on like a menu. They'll be like, so I'll do pom-pom balls with a side of funnels. I want 4 scoops and 3 dump trucks. And I'm like, all right, I don't know what you're planning, but here we go. It's just one of those like fun things, like the fun quirks of being like the Busy Toddler kids. I think this is totally normal. And so then like the next drawer is like kind of like I always say it's like the really pretty office supply. So it's like dot markers, Post-it notes, stickers, giant Sharpie markers. My paint cups live in there that I have where I keep paint and stuff like that. And just a few like little things of that. And then I have paintbrushes and some crayons, some markers, and then a drawer of stickers that my mother-in-law always sends the kids stickers so that I never have to buy stickers. Stickers are weirdly expensive, like weirdly expensive. And I'm not a sticker person. Like I wasn't one of those kids in school that had like the sticker books or had them all over their notebook. Like I was good. I don't know. It just never connected with my life. One of my friends was a big sticker person. So we always make jokes about this. That like I'm like, just you can do stickers with my kids. I'm not going to do stickers. But my mother-in-law sends them, so I keep them in this little drawer. And that's that and some white paper, like a big roll of white butcher paper. You know, Melissa and Doug sells like an 18-inch easel roll. That's a great roll to have. And then I always have blue painter's tape to hang stuff on the wall. I find that stuff. I love that stuff. I buy it like by the sleeves. Like a neighbor one time was doing like a project and she like a house project, like she needed it for like its actual intended use. Mm-hmm. She sent out a text to the neighborhood and she's like, I need a roll of blue tape. I'm looking at the Busy Toddler house. And I like took a picture of this bin that I have that literally has like 14 rolls in it. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I feel very targeted right now. I love blue tape. I love blue tape. And that's really, that's kind of all we have. Oh, I do have one giant roll of craft paper that I've had since 2015. And that one's a fun story. I bought it off Amazon. I was doing like the math in my head, like, is this a good deal? Like, I want to make sure like I'm a total, like I'm kind of just one of those people that I'm always couponing. I'm always looking for like the best deal. And I was like, okay, I think I did it. I think this is it. This is going to be the best deal. It was 2015. I bought a roll. It is so big. It's like one of those rolls they had in school that they would wheel into the room when you would do like, yeah, that's what I bought on accident. It is 5.5 years later and we are still working off of that same craft roll. Like every activity, if you've ever seen on my site that has that brown paper, that is the same roll. I think it was like $30, but the thing is huge. It's like the width of it when we first got it, like the circumference was like my head. I mean, it must have weighed like 50 pounds to move it around back in the old days. Now it's much more manageable, but man, I use it to wrap like every gift. I try to use it, but I'm never getting rid of that roll. It'll be with me. They'll bury me with it someday. But back to supplies. That really is all I have. And I really do. I've always said this, like if you really looked in your kitchen, especially in your garage, I think you could piece together a lot of what I have and what I use every day with my kids. I think you could piece a lot of it together. And it isn't expensive and it doesn't have to be fancy. You know, the fancy ones, they look super pretty on Pinterest, but let's be honest, like a kid does not care if this one is pretty or that one. They just don't. And the pretty ones are great, but they also take a lot of parent time to set up. And right. I don't have a lot of parent time on me right now. So it just needs to be like, open this, dump it in here, add these, and we move on and we're done. And now you're entertained for a long time. That's what I'm doing.
That is so helpful. Yes. So we'd love to hear more about your book, The Busy Toddler's Guide to Actual Parenting.
Oh, there you have it. I know everybody can't see it on the screen, but I can see it on the screen.
Yes, it's here.
It's here. Yeah, I just came up with this idea. I was working with my my dear friend, another blogging friend, you know, one of those secret blogging friends that I talked about. And she ended up leaving blogging and starting a publishing company. And she wrote a bunch of really successful children's books. And my favorite, I'll do a plug, is Zoe and Sassafras. If you have a kid that's into chapter books, like read these out loud. They're so good. And I'd come to her years ago, like right first into blogging, maybe like a year into blogging, I said, Asia, I need help. Should I write a book? This publishing company's come to me and they've said, you can write a book, like we'll publish your activities, blah, blah, blah. And Asia, having written several books at that time, says to me, no, don't write a book. Don't write a book, which was not the advice I was expecting. She goes, write an ebook, do that. Whatever you're thinking of doing, write it down as an ebook, sell it on your website, and just kind of go that route. Don't be tied down to a publisher or whatever. And I took her advice. And a year later, I wrote Playing Preschool, which was my homeschool preschool program. And I released that. And I still sell it to this day as an ebook on my site. And it became very popular during the pandemic. But it was last summer, 2019. And of course, I've stayed good friends with her for years. And she's opened this publishing company. And she calls me middle of last summer of 2019. And she says, I know what you're going to write. And it's time to do a book. And I said, okay. Because of course, she'd given me some of the best advice I'd ever received. And she's flawless with books. So I was like, all right, let's do this. And so we came up with this idea, again, going back to like, with Busy Toddler, I found this kind of niche on Instagram that didn't exist. And right now there's this zone in the parenting books that doesn't really exist. And that's kind of what I talk about a lot on Busy Toddler, which is this middle of the road, a very moderate approach to kind of real life parenting. And it doesn't sway one way really or the other way. It's just this very like real approach. Yes, your child is going to lick a tree, and you know what? It's going to be fine. And I always joke that like that's the kind of stuff I wanted to read in a parenting book, but it wasn't. Back when I was reading parenting books, I'd always end them and be like, okay, there's no hope for my children. Or I'd be like, I failed them as a mother. Like it's not going to happen. And so I wanted something that was just different and was just a very moderate, middle of the road approach. And then on the other side, there's a lot of kids activities books out there. And there's a lot of activity books you can go on Amazon and find, science activities and toddler activities and preschool activities, but nobody's married the two together. This idea that you can have both a parenting book and little activities to help you with your parenting, which is how I've always viewed activities. I've always viewed them as part of my parenting. It's a parenting tool that I use. So we came up with this idea that we were going to merge it together and we were going to put this book together that would kind of be the best of both worlds that I do, actual parenting along with activities. And that's where the book came from. And so the book starts with kind of my early motherhood and just kind of things that I learned along the way and kind of how I got to this point essentially in my motherhood, not with being Busy Toddler, but just with my motherhood and where I'm at. And then I walk through kind of what I call the tabies, which are the 1-year-olds, the not toddler, not babies. And then into the toddler years, which kind of spans into this idea of just taking a more empathetic approach with children and taking some breathing time for ourselves and realizing they're not doing pointed attacks at us. They just really are just 2 years old. And it's not something you're doing wrong. It's just, they're 2 years old. And then I just kind of walk through up into like how I use sensory bins for self-control and teaching rules and raising siblings, how to handle friendship conflicts with kids. And then we kind of move right into play and learning. And it all leads us into all the skills that I talk about in the book, walk you up to the moment where they're going to get ready for kindergarten, and how all this beautiful teaching and learning that you've done with your child and all these skills that you've given them over the years, these activities and the way that you've parented, it all leads up to this moment where you let them go at the door of kindergarten and you say, fare thee well. I hope I did it right. No, but really setting you up for letting your child go and this big moment of them taking on the world independently. And I just, it all flowed really well and it happened really naturally, the way that the book formats and flows for me, at least. And it's all kind of punctuated with like pictures of our actual lives and my actual kids. And it's very fun.
Pretty. Yeah, the layout of it is so different. When I opened it, I was like, this doesn't look like the parenting books I have that are now on my shelf because they overwhelm me.
I know, they overwhelm me too. And I was like, gosh, I remember especially being a new parent and being like, so I really want to read this. Oh, that is not going to happen tonight. And like the font is so small and I've got to read how many pages to understand. No, it's not going to happen. So I wanted it. We talked about it being a little more like a magazine article. Like each chapter reads about as fast as you would read an article in a magazine. And then it's all very skimmable. And I even pulled out bullet points at like the end. Just if you can't read anything, just read the takeaway message at the end of every chapter and you'll pretty much get what I was talking about.
But which is all what we need. Like we need the real quick skill. Nobody has time.
Nobody has time. Oh, I think the best thing I'm hearing is from a lot of families who are saying, like, we're both reading this book, both spouses, both partners are having a chance to read this because it isn't overwhelming and it isn't daunting and it feels much more approachable for everyone than a traditional parenting book does, which again always just made me feel like I was doing a really bad job.
Yes. I know. I'm like, I remember we did an interview with Jennifer from Kids Eat in Color.
Oh,
and
that's
she referenced
one of my
that.
secret blog friends. That's one of my secret blog friends.
But she said that, and it's so resonating with me because it's like those books. She's like, but then what? What happens when my kid doesn't do X, Y, and Z? Like your
Right.
book says they perfectly need to do because they never are going to.
No,
Right.
they're never going to. They're never going to. And I feel like with my book, like one of the things I just wanted to say was through the whole book is just to say, like, you're doing a good job. Your child's doing a good job. It's not always going to look fantastic, but all these little things you're doing, you know, these little itty bitty moments, they are all leading up to very big moments of this person that you are creating and developing. And it is, you are going to get there.
Oh, and everyone needs to hear that right now. It's been a tough year for a lot of people to parent.
What a year.
Yeah.
What a year for parenting.
Yes. Did you always know you were going to write a book?
I don't think so. I don't think I knew I was going to do any of this. Do you know what I mean? I just like the farthest I got to when I opened the Instagram was I'm going to open an Instagram account. I'm going to do activities. Like that was the period on the end of the sentence. It was right there. And but I also think that that's kind of been a nice thing. I have never been, I wouldn't say I'm not an ambitious person, but I'm also just someone who enjoys the ride and enjoys the walk. And I never look too far into the future. Mm-hmm. I like to set myself up for the future, but I'm never going to like get crushed by something not happening or something. Yes, it did happen or it didn't. And so I think in the back of my mind was always, well, wouldn't that be kind of cool to write a book someday and actually see my name like that? But I never knew what it would look like or how that would happen. And I just think it's fun that I got to use all these skills that I've been collecting my whole life. You know, I was a journalism major and I was the editor of a college newspaper and I left that to become a teacher. And then I became a teacher and I worked specifically in early childhood. And then as I'm doing that, I'm doing professional development, which is deeply looking into curriculum, which is what I end up writing is a curriculum for parents. And so it's like, and then I, you know, when in my side time, I ran a mini photography business for a while. And that's also like, you know, I knew how to take a picture. So it was kind of all these weird, random little skills that I picked up along the way, ended up all coming together into you're meant to be on Instagram.
It's so
Which is so funny.
Because you could show someone that and they'd be like, well, obviously all of the, like if like hindsight, like of course, all of these things of course led to this, but like you would never be like, yes, this is what's going to happen.
No, and I'm so old while I'm doing most of that stuff. Instagram doesn't even exist yet. And so then it's like, you know, this idea of what I do didn't even exist back then. It's, you know, it's.
Yeah. Well, I'm so excited for you about your book.
Thanks.
I mean, I haven't finished it, but I love the layout. I love the realness of it. And I'm so excited that it exists for other parents who are just starting their journey too.
That's my hope too, is I really like, I mean, of course we all need this, but I also I have dreams of the future of this being something that can help set up the next generation or the future or just tomorrow's generation, tomorrow's mom and dad for success as they start walking this road. Yeah. Have some of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
For sure.
Well,
do you have time for just like our quick
totally.
Rapid fire round? Yeah.
All right. I'll try to rapid fire it as best I can.
Whatever you can do.
I fail at it every time. So
so what do you do to take care of yourself?
I mean,
I know it's not sleep.
It's not sleep. No, it's not sleep. I talk to people. I'm like a talky kind of person. So when I'm like feeling like I need to do something, I hop on FaceTime or I hop on Marco Polo or, you know, any of those kind of like house party right now. And I chat with my friends. That's just kind of what I do. That's who I am. I'm so social. This has not been easy to be hidden away from my friends. I like talking.
I know it is a hard time for people who like use that outlet of like meeting friends.
Yeah.
And what is a favorite parenting tip or piece of advice that you have for people?
I always want to remind people that you are enough. And I just want you to say that over and over and again in your head. I am enough. You were given this child for a reason. You were put in this spot for a reason. And don't ever question if you are right for this child. You are right for this child and you are doing enough. You are doing plenty. And I always joke, if you are following me on Instagram or you're listening to a parenting podcast, then clearly you are really trying in your parenting, which means I can tell you above and beyond, you are doing enough. And just repeat it all the time. I am doing enough. Doing enough.
Oh, that's so good. And it's so funny because I'm like, no, I'm not. And I like
yes,
would
you
tell
are.
everyone else that they are.
No, we always do that. We're
right?
like, oh, you're doing a great job. Now, me, on the other hand, no, because trust me, if you had to give yourself advice, you turn it around, you'd be like, you are doing plenty. Like, come on, look at what you're doing. You're doing a great job.
And I think, like you said, it's almost like the mere fact that you're thinking about it and worrying about it means that you're probably a good parent. Yeah.
It means you're trying really hard. Which means I know you're doing enough. I know it.
Oh, and what is the best part of being a mom to you?
That it's always changing. It is always changing. As much as we joke about parenthood being Groundhog's Day and every day is wash, rinse, repeat, it isn't, because every day the kids are growing up and you are growing up and you're getting to be a wiser and an older and a better parent, and they're growing up to be a more mature person. And because of that, and because of those two things kind of interplaying with each other, it means that every single day is actually a little bit different and everything is always a little bit changing. And whatever is hard tomorrow might not be like that. And whatever is easy right now, tomorrow might change it all up. But it just means that it really is always this very like fluid, motion-filled time where things are always moving, and we certainly don't live a stagnant life, though it does feel that way sometimes.
Yeah, it's so true. And this is a hard one for people. Do you have a cute or funny kid story to share?
I thought about this all day, and I was like, what am I going to share about my kids that isn't like a potty talk story? Because legit, everything has to do with like bathroom humor around here. But I was laughing because my son and my daughter, both of them, the younger two, keep asking for camel. They keep wanting camel. Took me a little bit to realize they were talking about caramel corn from grandma, but they are both calling it camel, and sometimes camel corn, but mostly just camel. And my oldest, I love that he's 7.5 now because he's old enough that he can understand the funny, and we both locked eyes with each other and both had that like across the room, like, do not correct them. Do not correct them. And we're both laughing. And then later they left. And, Sam's like, did you want one hump or two, Mom? I was like, exactly.
That is so funny.
So forever camel corn around here.
Oh my gosh. What a little sass to recognize that. That's amazing.
Oh, he's a kid after my own heart.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Love it.
Well, I guess our last question is just, how can people find you? Everyone knows how to, but how can people find you? Those three people on the internet who haven't.
I mean, where am I not? You can find me on my website, busytoddler.com. You can find my book, Busy Toddler's Guide to Actual Parenting, on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. Local bookstores have it, so shop local. They have it. And always on Instagram, @BusyToddler. I'm literally always there.
Oh, Susie, thank you so much.
Of course.
I really appreciate your sense of humor.
No problem. Oh, it's been fun. Thanks for the laughs.
Thank you. We so appreciate your time and sharing with us. It's been amazing.
Thanks, ladies.
Well, have a great night.
All right. Bye, ladies.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Susie. We hope you enjoyed listening as much as we enjoyed our conversation. Remember, if you enjoyed the episode, we'd love it if you would leave a rating and review and share it with a friend. You can find us at momandpodcast.com, @momandpodcast on Instagram, or our Mom and Podcast Facebook group. Thanks again for listening. Bye.